Okay, that's promising.
Looking good.
That's us. You're on the mountain there.
Yay!
Steve, he's in the back there, and he'll be doing QA. So type your questions in. There's a little question box there, and you can type them in, and Steve will be, that's his whole purpose, is just answering your questions. So good resource to have, and he's one of our very knowledgeable members of the server team. So throw questions his way, and we'll bring him on. We'll do some QA as well. I can see him through the window, and he's looking really keen to answer questions. So what are we doing today? We're doing demos, Q&A, all kinds of stuff, the live Q&A. But we'll start off with a picture of a bunch of people looking upwards, and that's actually our staff there. Not all of them, but quite a few. That is Safe Software, and about the company, we're founded in 1993 in Canada, in Surrey, British Columbia, where we're headquartered. And what else can we say about that, about Safe Software, Laura? We've got about 10,000 customers around the world and about 100 employees, some of which we have there. So what do? We connect, we transform, and we automate. And that is really the whole purpose of Safe Software, is to produce software which allows you to make your data free, basically. No barriers. And to do that, we have 3 products. We've got FME Desktop, which is the authoring environment for your workflows. Then you push those up to FME Server, which we're talking about today, to allow people to work with them and to automate the running of those workspaces. And then the new kid on the block, FME Cloud, allows you to kind of like automate the install. You no longer have to install the software. You no longer have to have the hardware. You basically just fire up an instance, and it's pay as you go. And it's FME Server under the hood. It's as much as you want, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And FME Server, there we go. So we're going to be talking about a bunch of the uses of FME Server. Previous webinars, we talked about real-time, we talked about automation, and this time we're going to be talking specifically about how it enables you to provide self-serve services. Okay, so, but before we suit up, this is a picture, I think, of Laura. You were in Hawaii, right? Is this you? Laura just got back from Hawaii. Which island were you on?
I was on the Big Island. So it's the island of Hawaii.
Yeah, but what island?
The Hawaii Island.
Okay, that's confusing because the Big Island is Hawaii. But suit up, we're diving deep here. If you are new to FME, please go to our Getting Started page. Every week we have a webinar that explains the basics and the intro to desktop and server. But today we're diving deep. We're going to look at some very technical pieces of FME Server. But first we want to start with a poll, see where people are. What version of FME Server are you using? So what version? What version are you running, Laura?
I use probably all of them, but SP2 is my favorite at the moment.
Is it your favorite?
Yeah.
I use them all. And Steve in the back, he maintains VMs for 2014, 2013, 2012, so on, beta, so that we can troubleshoot and support all those products. Okay, so wow, 13% using SP2. That's great to see. You know.
Got quite a few not using FME Server.
Really, 35%.
That's an interesting statistic.
Okay, well you're going to learn all about self-serve today, and that is self-serve. What is it? It's the first thing that FME Server really did back in 2008 when it was released was enable people to self-serve. That means going to a web page and saying, I want this data, and I'm going to get it when I feel like it. So what they want, when they want it. Things like upload and validation. We're going to see examples of that today, perhaps. And so that was what it was. And really, if you think about it, it's freeing your time. So if you look at the picture here, the analogy is you go from a server that's providing food all the time to a chef that can make a beautiful data, basically. Make a beautiful, maybe a data pie or something.
So basically it skips out the step where users have to go to you to ask for your data. They can actually just get it directly themselves. Right?
Exactly, so that I can spend more time watching the World Cup. That's right. And so we want to start off by saying, hey, you want to provide some self-serve access, but what kinds of things do you want to basically offload? And so we've got a poll here. And what do you have a favorite in there that you like or you want to offload? Or
yeah, for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of validating data, actually.
Yes.
So being able to make sure it's all correct and it fits your standards before doing something with it, maybe.
And I'm old school, so extracting data. Getting it out to people is a big one for me. But also loading data, more and more we're seeing people want to push data in through things like email and stuff like that. We're going to cover a lot of that today.
Yeah, it's always a good one to combine with the validation as well, so you can do kind of a two-step process.
You know what, really, that's the way it goes. You have to load your data, and then you discover it's invalid, so then you add the validation piece. A lot of people doing extracting data, 80%.
Yeah.
Wow, okay, so that's good. That's good. We got some things to show there. So thanks for filling out that poll. We are going to start with a baby typing on a keyboard. Well, actually, we're going to talk about super simple self-serve, which you don't want to say 3 times. Super simple self-serve. What is it? It's things so easy that almost a baby could do it. It's things like dragging a file into a directory. It's things like sending an email. Things that even maybe your grandparent could do.
Yeah, even my 87-year-old grandfather could send an email. So.
He sends email?
Yeah.
There you go. So your grandpa could do this. The first one we're going to talk about is drag and drop. And this is really, I built a simple tool here that allows us to convert the format, not the format, just convert the coordinate system of a map info file to lat long. That's all this does. And it's just the tool I need, in fact. So I have Finder up here. And, oh, here we go. I've got a directory here. It's on my network. And notice I'm using a Mac, Laura. Do we support FME Server on Mac?
No, we don't.
Okay, so there's no way that this could be, some sort of weird thing where I'm just dragging it into a local directory. This is a network file share here. And let me show you the demo. And the demo is taking this map info file and popping it into this directory right here. Okay, input. There we go. Like my first day using the Mac here. Okay, so I'm going to take the tab file here, and I'm going to drop that into this input directory. Never goes in there. I always have to drag it over here in this input directory. And my output, my complete map info file will be placed in this output directory. But not until the transformation won't actually take place until it's got all the files that make up a map info data set, which is all 4 of these. So I drop that in, and now we wait about 5 seconds, and what will we see? We'll automatically see the output show up in that directory. This is always the most nerve-wracking part of the demo because, okay, wasn't sure. So let's see what we actually ended up with there using good old Data Inspector. So the source data was a map info tab file. And if I click here, I can see that the coordinate system was UTM-83. And if I drag the other tab file in, select it, it's lat long. So what I have here is a very basic tool that anybody could use. Back when I was a technician, a junior technician, somebody used to come to me all the time and said, hey, can you reproject this file? Literally now they just drag in this directory and do it themselves. So there we go with that. And I want to show how that's possible now, kind of explain that. So let's go to our web interface to start. And here we go right there. This is the out-of-the-box interface. And if I come into notifications, we see under publications a publication that is called, well, it uses the protocol Directory Watch, new for 2014. In here we specify, monitor this directory that's called input here. When there's a new file, send a message to this topic. A topic is like an endpoint, so send a message to this topic so that something that subscribes to that topic can use that message. Before I show the workspace that's subscribed to that, I'll talk about how this is a network file share. So this is a network file share. How did we put it into this sort of resources area here? Well, let me step back and talk about resources in general. That's a new thing for 2014 as well. Resources are a way of having persistent data on the server. You can upload it, and I can show that in a second. But also you can map to things like UNC paths to network file shares and show your files here. So no longer do you have to upload your data. You can just specify data that's already on your server. You'll see more of that coming up. So how do we do that? Well, I'll show you the file. It's a configuration file, and actually Steve found out recently that you have to modify it in 2 spots. But I'll just show you one spot that you have to change to get this configuration working. So in the FME server configuration file, there's a little spot where you define those directories. And here's that map info tab, reproject, that's my resource directory name. And here's the actual UNC path to that network file share. So now you can specify these directories, which allows you to basically use those files that are in your file system already.
So you can interact with them through the server web interface, or you could just work with them directly on your file share network, or through Finder, for example.
Exactly.
On a Mac.
Exactly. So once that file message goes into this topic, we have a workspace that picks up on that. Here's the workspace, and here we've got the reader here. It's a directory watch reader, which is a custom reader. Under the hood, custom format, under the hood it basically takes in some JSON and then flattens it out. So this reader is available through the FME store, and it's called, what is it called? Directory Watch. And you can use that, and all it does is just reads those JSON messages and converts them into the name of the file and the operation, being create, modify, or delete on the file. So how do we get the message to actually get in here? Well, first we have to publish the workspace to FME server, like so. Put in our credentials. That looks good. And the key is the notification service here, selecting that and saying that subscribe to that topic. So if we look back at that page, this is the topic that would be notified. Now we're subscribing to it, and we're saying pass that file message in through this reader. So that's how we make the connection there. Okay, once that's in here, we test to see, is it a create operation, because we're only interested in new files. That's the create. And then we have a custom transformer called the map info checker here. Map info tab dataset existence checker. So if I come in here, what does it do? Well, it comes in and it looks and says, right here, it says, is this a tab file? If it is a tab file, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to check for the DAT file and the ID file and the map file. So all 4 of those files make up the tab data set. Otherwise it'll loop. It'll loop for a certain number of loops and then it'll time out. And you can configure that. Once it's found all those files, then it goes off to the job submitter service and it says to another workspace, okay, let's run that reproject workspace. We give it the source file name, which comes from the notification. And then we end up with the file, and then we put that into the resources directory by copying it out. So that's the whole demo there, and it really is just as simple as dragging a file and dropping it into a directory.
And then with all the power of FME server in the background, you can pretty much do anything with those files. So it doesn't have to be just a simple reprojection, right?
Yeah, and exactly. And it doesn't even have to be drag and drop. You could, since you have the reproject workflow, you could do an email to kick it off. You could do an FTP or something. It's just lots of different options. The next one I want to talk about is, again, super simple. Email data loading with validation. Anybody can send an email. Let's do the demo, and we'll see how this works. So some of you may have seen this demo before, and I'm not going to do the whole thing. I'm just going to do the main parts that apply here. And again, it's on FMEpedia, so you can come and you can get this and try it out. And you can fork it on GitHub, or you can download it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to email this file, this CAD file with some water pipes in there, and it's going to be validated by a workspace. And I'm going to get a report back that says it's good or it's bad, and we'll see what happens. So I'll copy that, and I'm going to send an email off to FME server. Here is data. You can imagine now I'm a contractor or a third party that has to submit data, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Here's some bad data. You can probably guess that it's not going to pass validation based on the name. So I'm not going to wait for that, but it comes back as an email, and this is what we see once it's been validated. It only takes about a minute. In this case, it says it's not been loaded. There is a problem, so let's take a look at the attachment, and it's a little HTML file with some maps. It's pretty nice. it says that we've got diameter attributes that are invalid. And we've also got some geometries that are not valid. So here we got some lines that cross each other without vertices, and so that's invalid. Immediately it tells us, hey, we need to provide better data, and it stops bad data from getting in. So it's kind of a benefit to both parties involved in this process. So how does it work? That is the key message, or the key point here, or the key thing we're trying to get across in this deep dive webinar, this technical webinar. If we come over to notifications we're going to use another server now.
This one should be back.
Here it is. And this one is, see if I got the password right. Nope, but I will get it right. Okay, so if we come into notifications, it's basically the same mechanism that kicks this off. Well, similar mechanism, I should say. Publications, in this case, the publication uses email, an SMTP server that's actually provided with FME server. So we get to specify the email username. You send an email to the server with this username, and the message, the email message, including attachments, will be passed along to this topic. So you can imagine now we take a workspace and we subscribe it onto there. And what does the workspace look like? Well, before I should mention, I got to mention this, that people had problems with SMTP because they have to open up a port. So now we introduce IMAP. So this is a much easier method for people to get approved, basically. You go out to your email server and you poll every once in a while to get the email with the attachment, and then that can kick off the process. But SMTP is more real-time because you send the email directly to the server. So either option will work. It's up to you. Okay, so that kicks off a workspace, and let's see what that workspace looks like. Here it is. It's a big workspace. It's been built up, but I'm going to focus on certain areas here. These three pieces here are equivalent to that directory watch reader we had before. In fact, we have a replacement for this, which is the email, FME server email format, which will take these three transformers and wrap them up into one custom reader. Anyway, this just shows that under the hood it is a JSON flattener. But what comes out here is the attachment as a list item. Here's the attachment, and of course it's that DWG file. So we're going to read in that DWG file, and we're going to do a bunch of things, but two of the things to focus on here are we're going to validate the geometry using this transformer here, and we're also going to do a test on the attributes. In this case, if the diameter is set to 0, we're considering that to be invalid. It has to be probably greater than 0 even. Once we've determined the errors, we send them along, and we use a bunch of these XML templators to build up that HTML report before we write it out to a file system, because you have to write out the file if you want to attach it to the outbound email. Mm-hmm. That's a key piece. You can't just build the attachment and then somehow have it go out. You have to save it, and that's what we've done here, to a unique directory. That's the UUID. Then we build up the email here in JSON, email to, attachment, subject, including the attachment. Again, this has been replaced as well. We're showing you kind of the older way to do things so that we can show you we have an email generator that would replace this if we come in here. And now you can see it's a little more clear to understand that. So that's what would build up that JSON and then ultimately send that out to a topic, this topic here, which would then send an email. So how does it send the email? I can see Laura's asking me, how does it send the email? Okay, well let's go. Yeah, let's go to the server. And now we're looking at a subscription. It's kind of like the workspace, something that connects to a topic. And here we go.
Subscriptions are basically just for outgoing notifications.
Exactly. Publications are inbound. They kick off workspaces. Subscriptions really usually come from a workspace and then kick off a message. And in this case, it's email. It's SMTP, just like we were using before. But this time we're using a Gmail SMTP server. Mm-hmm. And so you set this stuff up, and then it will. Now it's configured to send the email.
And then with that JSON that you use to kick this off, it just replaces all those options down at the bottom, so you can actually
Yeah.
fill that in dynamically depending on what happened.
Absolutely. Subscriber content, email to, all of that stuff is seen. You can see in here too, attachment, subscriber content. And of course you can do the same thing with the email generator transformer. Okay, let's keep going. So that was, what was that? That was super simple self-serve. And really that's stuff that's so easy a baby can do it. But now we want more options. We want to be flexible. And how do we do that, Laura? How do we provide the flexibility?
So we can do that through the workspaces. We have this concept of published parameters, which basically allow you to take options inside your workspaces and expose them to the end user. So they have control over exactly what happens inside the translation and what happens, what kind of outputs created, what kind of inputs read in, and all that.
It's just like making a pizza, right? I
guess so, yeah. It lets you pick your toppings, I guess you could say. Yeah.
There you go. And if you want double cheese, that's like getting another engine, an FME engine. Okay. So I'm going to start off showing a very simple example. We're going to do format and coordinate system conversion in this case. And we could show uploading files, which would be the ability to upload a file through the web page and convert it, but we've been doing that for a while. I really want to show an example where you're using an existing network file system. Could you imagine if you had, say, files that were hundreds of megabytes or gigabytes? You don't want to have to upload that again through a web tier, through a web page, just to have it come back down to the same file system effectively and then run through. So let's take a look at an example here. Okay, so I'm going to go in through repositories, SelfServe, we've got the Easy Translator. Just going to use the job submitter transformer. The job submitter is really the closest thing to basically running the workspace on FME desktop. It's like a prompt and run if you've done that before. And again, here I could do the file upload to upload the files, but I don't want to because imagine if they're really big. Really what I want to do is come down to this network file system drive here and select, in this case I'll use the input that we used for the directory watch. I'm just selecting the tab file, and sure, I'll go to AutoCAD, that's fine. And maybe I want to go to UTM. See, I got the choice now. I'm in a bit more control. I got that flexibility like you were talking about, Laura. And then I can specify where I want it to go. So in this case, I'll put it in the output directory again, sure. And I'm going to give it a name. There's another option I have. This name I'll call translated data, or I could call it UTM. It's up to me. Click run. And it takes, well, not a lot of time. Now we can go and look back at our network file system, which is right here in the output directory. There's our translated data UTM DWG file. So the ability to really use your existing file system and not have to worry about uploading files or anything like that. But we're not done there. A lot of people are saying, hey, you know what, I'm starting to use cloud file systems. I'm starting to use the internet and my data is up in the cloud, so what can you do for me there? Just this week we've actually checked in the ability for S3 to be used as one of these resource directories. So if I come along here, you can see that this network file share is a resource directory. Now we can use S3 buckets as resource directories. And we're going to be continuing to expand this sort of internet as a file system concept so that we can, if your data is in the cloud, no problem, it's just another file system to us. So very cool, cutting edge stuff. Okay, I think now we're going to pop in for some Q&A. Okay, Steve, you got a question for us?
Yeah, we got a question here. We got one attendee looking to watch S3 buckets. Can we do that yet?
Oh, that's a great one. We can't yet, but the first step in adding those it all happens now through resource directories. The first step is to add the resource directory itself so you can see it. The second step is to add the ability to receive triggers, basically, to watch. Yeah, so it's coming. That will definitely be coming. Yeah. Yeah,
I think we, like you said just a few minutes ago, we've got the resources now for S3, so that's great, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, and yeah, the only other one was a little bit more on publication topics and subscriptions. I think the breeze over on that just kind of tying all that together for some of the demos? Because we do work with those a lot in these demos, right?
Absolutely. I'll take a quick run back at that, and it is confusing stuff. That's why we put in a little diagram here to help. But with the publication, you basically create the ability to, if I click new here, the ability to receive messages, and that's what they are, messages from any of these protocols. When say a new notification is placed into Amazon, or a new JMS message is put into a queue, we receive that, but where does it go? It goes into a topic, and you get to specify what topic it goes to. And a topic is just an endpoint. It's just a dumb thing that sits there and goes, hey, it's like a bucket basically where messages go in, and then you have subscribers that can look at those buckets. So a subscriber over here can look at a topic, and here's a topic here, and we can pick whatever topic we want, and then it can do something with that message. It can push it to a mobile phone, or it can put it on FTP if it's a file attachment. You name it. In between, generally, when you publish, I showed the publishing of the subscriber, the workspace will subscribe to a topic. That's almost always the case. You have a publication to a topic, then you have a workspace published and subscribed through notification service to a topic, works with that topic, works with the message, or maybe an attachment like we saw in the email case, and then uses a notifier to push out a message to a subscription, which then, in the case I showed, sends an email. Yeah. So once you review that a few times, you start to get the feel for it. It took us a while just to get our hands around it. It's going to be great. Next release, if you were at the UC, there was a nice user interface, kind of mock-up demoed there, and so using this kind of stuff is going to be a lot easier. In fact, the word topic you won't even have to use that word again. So, but for now, here's where we are. So,
yeah, that's all right.
Okay. I think we'll jump back into the presentation. Thank you, Steve. So now we're talking about, what are we talking about? We're still talking about the flexibility of having published parameters and things. Mm-hmm. But data delivery is really the first thing we did with FME Server way back when we had Spatial Direct, and we saw that 80% of people are interested in this particular topic. So what is it, Laura?
So it's essentially being able to deliver your data. So being able to provide data that your users might be interested in, exactly how they want it, so what formats, what kinds of data, what kinds of layers and all that, and when they want it. So they can go in, request it exactly when they need it, and get it as soon as they want to start working with it.
If I'm a keener, I work all night, 1 a.m. in the morning, I can get my data.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, and you're going to show us, what are you going to show us? The basic.
So I'm going to show you a very basic demo to start here. So just want to make sure my screen is showing. Can you just bring that up? Okay, perfect.
Looking
all right.
Good.
So I'm just going to take a look. This is the default server interface, so pretty similar to what Aaron was showing just now. So I'm just going to show you an example using one of the sample demos that ships with FME Server. We'll take a look at the Austin download workspace this time. And here I'm going to show you running through the data download service. So basically the service will run a workspace and provide a link back to be able to download the output of a particular workspace. So inside here we've got this list of published parameters. So this is what provides your end users with the ability to decide exactly what kind of data they want. So here, the first published parameter here that I think is most important for this is this layers to download option. So what this does is it gives them enough control to select what layers or what feature types or tables they're actually interested in downloading through this service. So for example, I've got airports selected here, and maybe I want to get some information about railroads as well for this particular area. Next, I can select an output coordinate system, so I can decide how I'd like my features to be projected in the other when I get them back. So here you'll notice in this drop-down there's only a few options. FME itself supports over 2,000 different coordinate systems, so we've pared that down to a selection of 3 that are relevant for the particular data set that we're working with. So these are all based in Texas, so these are all ones that would make sense for this particular data set. Next, we've got a parameter for the output format. So again, of the is it 300 plus formats that FME supports. We've got a list of only a few here that make sense for the context of this particular download service. So maybe I'll select KML for that. Down below here, you see these min X and min Y, max X, maximum Y options. This actually lets me choose or select an area of interest or a search envelope for the features. So if I'm only interested in a specific area inside Austin and I only want to download data for that particular spot, I can actually put in my coordinates here. So if I happen to know the lat-long coordinates for the search area that I was interested in, I could type them in here.
You're a true geo geek if you know that.
Yeah, it's true. So we'll take a look at an example soon showing maybe a better use for this, so you don't actually have to force your users to type coordinates in there. So when that's done, I can run my workspace. It'll take a couple of seconds to run, so it's generating the output that I've selected, so reading in the layers that I wanted. And when that's finished, there we go. We get this data download URL, so I can click on here. And this provides me a zip file containing the data set that I just requested.
What about if it's going to take a long time? Like 3 hours or who knows how long?
So you requested some crazy huge...
Big raster point cloud extract.
Okay, so you don't want to sit here and watch your little spinner go around in your web browser for an hour while that goes. So we have another option for that. So if I go back to my configure page here, see this leaves all my settings the same. But at the very top here, we have these advanced options. So I can select to email results. So what happens with this is instead of, when I hit run workspace, actually we see the difference after putting my email. Instead of coming back with the link to download the output from that workspace after everything's finished running, it simply tells me the job's been submitted, and whenever it finishes, however long that takes, it'll send me an email back on the other side.
That's a much nicer experience for those longer downloads.
Yeah, so you don't have to sit here and stare at it until it's finished. Okay.
So yeah, I'm interested in those published parameters and what they look like in the workspace. I didn't even touch on them, so
yeah, so
how
let me
does that work?
Bring up the workspace here. Let me see if I can find it. This is it. So there's not much to look at. It's a very simple workspace, probably one of the smallest ones you can make inside FME. And all the power here for the output is done through these published parameters. So each of these parameters inside my workspace corresponds to one of those parameters I saw in the web interface there. So the ones I'll touch on here, we can take a look at layers to download. So this parameter is actually linked to a parameter on the reader itself. So it tells FME that it should only read in specific layers from, or specific shape files in this case, or specific parts of my input data set. And so that's linked to the feature types to read parameter. So this exists for pretty much every reader inside FME. You can publish this and let your users select which tables or feature types or layers or any of that they're interested in downloading.
For Esri, it would be feature classes. For database, it would be tables.
Yeah, exactly. So the next one you can look at is the output coordinate system here. So this is linked to a parameter on the writer itself. So that's the coordinate system parameter here. It just tells FME if this doesn't match the source coordinate system, it should reproject into whatever coordinate system was selected. I can just open this up and show you how it's set up inside. So this actually uses a published parameter type called choice with alias. And basically what that means is I can set up a display name for each of my options inside here. So what happens in the background for FME is when selecting coordinate systems, it expects kind of this short kind of coded value. So instead of forcing the users to try and figure out and interpret, what UPSG 32614 happens to be, you can provide them with this display name so they can see some descriptive text showing what that is all about.
So it's a lot maybe you know the UPSG codes, you can just type them in, but really most people don't, so just let's give them a plain text understanding of this.
Yeah, exactly. And you can do this for any type of parameter. So if you have layer names that are kind of strange internally, you can expose them to the user in a much more friendly way.
Like that send art, whatever.
Yeah, there was one in there, yeah.
So we could make that a nice name. Okay. Okay.
Exactly. Okay, let me get back to the PowerPoint here.
So how do we go from that user interface to starting to make, maybe I want my own branding. I want to make my own web page. separate, just a simple web page.
So if you don't maybe particularly like what these drop downs look like and you don't want people to see all the FME branding everywhere.
I do like the width, but
yeah,
maybe I want my
I do like you have lots of space for your coordinates. You can be very precise.
super precise.
So what we have in here as a starting point, if you want to go in and create your own web application on top of FME Server, basically to provide your own interface. From here, if you're in the configure page for your workspace, we've got this button to show developer information. So you can click on that, and we've got some starting points for building up your own form or your own web page on top of that. So in the form example here, we've got some HTML that you can use as a starting point. So you can copy this out into an HTML file, and it's a good place to start with creating this. So it puts in all the inputs in there, and you can adjust that with your own kind of CSS on top of it.
Great. So where can we take that? Maybe I'd love to see an example.
Okay. Well, I just so happen to have an example up here. So this is an example that's up on FMEpedia. So it's a data distribution example here. So let me get this going. So this is what it looks like. It uses a very similar workspace to the one I was just showing. This is for the city of Vancouver, though, instead. And what we have, you notice we've got a web map in the background this time.
That's nice. Yeah.
So we have a similar concept as to this bounding box. Instead of having to type in coordinates, you can actually go into this web map and select the area that you're interested in. So if I click on Draw Polygon here, I can decide I only want to download data for this section of the city of Vancouver.
I live in that part, so I'm keenly interested now.
Okay. So what might you be interested? So here we've got our layers to download. So these all correspond to parameters inside the workspace. So maybe we can go with some SkyTrain lines and maybe SkyTrain stations inside this area. You'll notice down here at the bottom we've got this little query. So this is just an example to show what the query that's being submitted to FME Server might look like. You'll see here the geometry that I drew into this page has been converted into, what's it called? It's
well-known.
Well-known text. There we go. So it's just a polygon with all the coordinates listed inside there, and that's being submitted into the workspace behind the scenes.
So way beyond a bounding box now. You can have all kinds of vertices.
Yeah, you can get really fancy. You can draw all kinds of shapes that you want. So this is a level up from the last example, I guess. So here we've got output coordinate system again, and the output format. So I can go, maybe I'll stick with PDF for this. I can request my data, and then I'll see once that finishes running, we have a success, and I can download my data. So that comes back as a zip file, basically the same as that last workspace.
Excellent.
So I can show you what this workspace looks like and kind of show you how this area of interest comes around.
Those parameters on the side there.
Okay, and I can talk about that too. So these parameters are actually not hard-coded in this web application. What I'm doing in the background is I'm sending a query to FME Server to ask it to basically check the workspace and give me back a list of all the published parameters that exist inside there. So it checks that, and it tells me exactly what's set up inside my workspace, and then shows it on this page. So it's all dynamic. So if I went into my workspace and maybe added a new layer, say I wanted to put information about maybe the C-bus, I could put that in there. I just change my workspace, save that, republish to server, and this will automatically adjust based on what's inside there.
Nice. So I'm not messing with the HTML, JavaScript all the time. It's from the workspace.
Yeah, so you don't have to worry too much if workspaces change in the background there.
Yeah. Maybe let's look at the workspace. I'd love to see how that well-known text was used. And
okay, so yeah, we'll start there. We'll take a look at how I'm doing this area of interest in the background. So let me get my workspace going, and it is this guy here. So this is what the workspace looks like. You can see down at the bottom I've got my list of published parameters. So this matches what I saw in that interface. The geometry one here is the most interesting one. And so what I've done is I've taken this, so it takes in that well-known text value, and I've linked this published parameter to a parameter inside a transformer called the geometry replacer. And basically all this transformer does is it takes whatever geometry and whatever encoding it's submitted as. So here I've got well-known text, but it could be a variety of other types of encoding. So it takes it from that published parameter and then creates a real geometry from it. So it's actually creating a polygon that fits the shape that I drew.
It's interesting anecdote. On the World Tour and at the UC, we talked, there was a customer that used this transformer to save, I think it was about $500,000 over 3 years, because the vendor that was giving them data, parcel data, said, well, we'll give it to you, but it's in this weird text format, and first we have to pass that to our other company. That company will then convert that weird text format into polygons and then give it back to you. But they sent the file to us, and well, it was well-known text. So this transformer, they then basically said to the company, hey, we can actually convert that file ourselves, so we don't need that extra money. And they were able to negotiate. They didn't even have to use the transformer. They just said, hey, we've got this transformer. They were able to negotiate and save a bunch of money just threatening that transformer.
Wow. So it's small yet powerful.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So inside this workspace, so once I've got this polygon created from the awesome geometry replacer here, yeah. I send that into the clipper, so it reads in my source data set. So this contains information for the entire city of Vancouver, and then it clips it to that polygon that I've selected in my web interface, and then returns it out into the format of my choosing using the generic writer here.
If you had a lot of data in those feature types, then you might use the feature reader to do the clipping, right?
Yeah, so that'd be a more efficient option in that case.
Okay.
So that's true.
Okay, so the parameters, let's go back to the parameters. How did you get them from FME Server?
Okay.
You said it asked FME Server. I'd love to.
So you'd like to see how that call happened?
Yeah.
So I did that using the REST API that comes with FME Server. So I can show you exactly where that call is. So if I go into my FME Server, so I'm at the hostname / FME REST here. This is our REST interface, our REST API documentation page. If I go into the API, I can find it. So there's a whole bunch of different things I can do using REST to control FME Server. The one I'll show you is inside repositories here. And about partway down, you see there's this call here to retrieve all the published parameters from a specific workspace. So I can go inside here.
Nice.
And this tells me exactly what I need to set up the call. And basically I can just select which workspace I'm interested in, and it'll send me back some JSON with a list of all the parameters, all the parameter types, and all the available options that are set up inside the workspace.
Could I get XML if I wanted?
Yeah, you could do that if you wanted to work with XML. So
I don't, but in case Dawn is listening, I want to throw that in. But I like the flexibility of REST in that you can use it inside of a workspace, pull it down, JavaScript or Ruby or whatever kind of language you're using. I'm a JavaScript guy. I don't want to have to do this REST stuff. Can you give me something there?
Okay. So yeah, actually we've recently built up a JavaScript library for interacting with FME Server, just to make it even easier to deal with these types of calls. So if you're interested in using that, you can find this in the developer playground. So this is all recently redone. This has happened in the last couple of weeks. So a lot of work went into this. And if you're into the page, so it says playground.fmeserver.com. Right at the very top, you can see JavaScript libraries. And we've got one for FME Server right here. So inside here, I've got a list of all the calls I can make to server just using JavaScript. So this is all done. And it does all the rest in the background, so you don't have to worry about interpreting the JSON yourself, or it calls back the JSON, so you don't have to worry about setting up the calls yourself.
Excellent.
So inside here, get workspace parameters. It's right there.
So that's the call. Gets the parameters.
Yep,
Excellent.
it's as simple as that.
Excellent.
All right.
So that's really a kind of a whirlwind tour of what you can do with data delivery and some flexibility using published parameters. Now we're going to talk about taking it to a new level. First we had just no options, right? Super simple. Then we had options which were hard-coded in the workspace. A lot of people say, you know what, now I want the options to be dynamic. I want them to come from data itself. And that's where you have Multistep SelfService. So if you go to the next one here, and the way that works basically is you have one workspace that provides JSON that is the actual options. So it goes, looks at some data, maybe you uploaded some, maybe you have something in the database table, looks at that information, that data, and provides some options. Then JavaScript, or it could be Ruby or whatever you want, creates an HTML form, and the user makes a bunch of selections and then hits run, and then the actual transformation request is performed. So it's kind of this multi-step self-serve.
So it's all very data-driven. So it's all very specific options depending on what kind of data is available inside there and what the user wants to be doing.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so super dynamic, I guess.
Super dynamic, super data-driven.
Okay, so we happen to have an example for showing conceptually how this might look. So we've done this through what we call the easy geocoding geocoder. So let me get that going here. So I have, it's not it. This is it here. So it's a pretty simple looking interface. And basically what this entire app is supposed to do is let you, or let the end user, take a CSV file that contains address information. They can upload it to this application and have it geocoded and sent back as a KML file showing all the points.
What's the CSV file look like? Do you have that handy?
I happen to have that here, so let me get that up. It's in Excel here, there we go. So this is what my CSV file looks like. It's all comma separated in the background, but I like how it looks in Excel. So it's just got my records, my address, city, and all that information inside. And there's no coordinates.
And the key point is the field names could change from CSV to CSV.
If you have different users uploading their CSVs, they may not call their address line 1. It might be ADDR or something like that.
Right.
So every CSV can be different, and we want to be able to provide flexibility depending on what kinds of column names exist in the CSV. So without having to hard code this or put in every possible combination of names that a user could think of. It's like zip4. I mean, you're not going to think of that to put into a web application.
Nope.
So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to upload my CSV file first and show you how this works. So this is it here. So open that up. So what happened there in the background was I submitted this file. It was published up to a workspace. That workspace grabbed the CSV and read it in, and grabbed a list of all the column names that existed. So you can see these match up with the column names in that CSV I was showing. So you've got address line 1 and zip4 and all that.
It was so quick I almost don't believe it. But I've seen it, so
Yeah, a workspace actually ran there. So that workspace returned JSON, which I then used to populate these drop-down boxes. So inside here I can select which fields correspond to which geocoding fields I want to be using. So I'll just set this up. So I've got my city here and my state or province. This is US data, so I'm going to use the zip code, and then my country code at the bottom. So next, I'm going to push this button, and that's going to take those options, submit them to another workspace on the server, which actually does the geocoding. And in a couple of minutes here, there we go, I get my results back directly in my browser. So I can click on that, open up this KML. Oops, I forgot to load this in advance. I had another copy, but should show up. There we go. So there's our points from our CSV. So I've got 5 geocoded addresses directly in this KML file.
Wow, that's hugely powerful, just being able to change the form as you want. I've had a lot of people ask about that recently, actually. They wanted Workbench to have the same functionality. I don't know if Workbench ever will, but here you go with an example of how you can build a web interface that does this. And they can borrow this code as well.
Yes, absolutely. So this code's available up on GitHub. We have an FMEpedia article up on our FMEpedia site now, so you can go and search for that and download all the source code for this example. It's fairly simple. Basically works through 2 calls to 2 different workspaces. The first to get the information and the second to actually do the geocoding.
Can you show us how the data upload part was done?
Data upload, sure.
Was there a call for that in the playground?
Yep, so I used a call for that. So I can show you what that looks like in the developer playground here. So inside here, we've got an example about dealing with data uploads. So this is an in-session upload. So it came directly from the browser and was pushed straight out to another workspace. And then we've got all our calls in here through the FME server. So we've got this data upload call. Basically upload your file. It comes back with the path to that file, and you can use that as the source parameter in the workspace.
That's great.
It's pretty straightforward for that.
So once you've got that file up there, then you send that off to that workspace, I guess, that created the JSON.
Yes, that's right. So I've got this workspace here. So this is the one that I've set up. So once the file is uploaded, the source dataset parameter that I have published gets set to the location of where that file went.
Ah, that's how you allow the input.
Mm-hmm. And this reads in my CSV. You'll notice up here it's using a special reader. So this is the schema reader, which essentially takes an input file and scans it and gets all the information about the structure of the file itself. So in here, I can grab the list of all the column names or all the attributes inside there. So I used a list exploder in this case to create a single feature for each one of those columns. And then I put this into the JSON templater to build up a JSON string containing a list of all the column names. So I then took that JSON and wrote it out with the text line writer. And I have this workspace registered in FME server with the data streaming service. So when my application sends a call to run this workspace, the JSON is returned directly back to my calling application, so my JavaScript application in this case. It takes that JavaScript or that JSON and populates my drop-down boxes.
So that data streaming service really allows you to get the results immediately to the client that requested it.
Yes, exactly.
And then once you get that, you fill out the form, and then you hit run, and where do we go from there? I'm guessing published parameters are involved.
Yes, exactly. So I've got the second workspace here that's set up to take in all that information as published parameters. So you can see all my geocoding fields right here, as well as my source data set, so that's going to be set to that file that I uploaded. This time I use the CSV reader to read in the file itself, bring in all the features with all the addresses. I then use an attribute creator to build up a query to a geocoding site. So I'm using Geography in this case. That's a free kind of open source geocoder. And then I use an HTTP fetcher to send the request up there. I grab the results. It comes back as XML, so I flatten it out, create some point geometries, and then write them out to KML.
Just like that. And you could use ArcGIS Online or Google Maps or something like that as the geocoder as well.
Yeah, so you can use whatever you want. So I just happened to pick this one. So it was simple, a good example here. And this workspace, again, is registered with the data streaming service so that my KML is returned directly back to my browser, so it downloads immediately.
Nice, nice. Okay, let's flip to the next slide here, and I'm going to talk. Really, I'm going to take just the last 5 minutes. We'll do Q&A after, so we'll finish up around 9 o'clock, and then we'll stay around for 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes to do a Q&A, just to make sure you get covered off there. But I want to talk about how you self-serve in the past, you know, maybe a long time ago, was always just, you know, go to a web page and that sort of thing. But this mobile thing, I guess, is not a fad. People are going to keep going with these mobile phones, so might as well embrace it. And how can we enable self-serve for mobile? Well, I want to talk about one case, Farallon Geographics. They built an app that really, they needed to collect a network of their storm drains. They needed a database of this, and so they said, well, we could go out in the field and write all this information down and then give it to somebody else. But what they decided to do was build an app that connected to FME server to allow people in the field to self-serve enter that information. And what they've got here is basically, it works a lot like the sample that Laura just showed. The first step in this app is it goes and it asks the server for existing information on the storm network, storm drain network. That comes back. They can then select those points, and they can update them. They can select the different materials. They can also add new features. Then, just like that app that Laura showed, the second part is submitting that information to FME server, where it is then stored in a geodatabase. So, and again, throwing around JSON. This app would have been written in Java, but the same thing. Laura wrote that in JavaScript, Java, Ruby, whatever language you want. It's just making these REST calls to get information. The last mobile app I'll talk about is one developed by Alpine Shire Council. They had this process where bushfires are a really big deal in Australia, in the fact that they burn down a lot of property. So when you build a structure, you need to have approval that basically says this is a defensible area, defensible against basically bushfires. So what they were doing in the past is they would have points, proposed building sites sent into the offices, and they would do some analysis, and then they would get back to the person. And it's a slow process, and there were flaws in it. So what they decided to do was build an iPad app where they go into the field, the operator goes into the field with the citizen, and they actually pick the spot that they're going to build or propose to. They go to it. They send the point off to FME server. What they get back are these sort of risk analysis rings, if you will, and it almost looks like a baseball diamond there, but it's not baseball, it's risk. And they say, okay, well, this spot's not very good, and then they can have a dialogue right then and there, and it's a much higher engagement rate. And you can even imagine a situation where eventually people from the government wouldn't have to even come out. Perhaps people will use this app themselves on their phones, or who knows. So just another way that you're kind of offloading some of this work to the person that's in the field, really. So that's a whirlwind view. We did the simple, we did the flexible, we did the dynamic, we did mobile. Control, if we can have the last poll brought up here, where we would like to know which mechanism has you most excited. what are these mechanisms for providing self-serve access to data and to transformations has you most excited? Do you, I mean, I like mobile phones, so that one's kind of exciting to me.
Yeah, I like the simplicity of email, actually, myself.
Yeah. I do like the drag and drop. It's, who knows if that one will take off, but it is it's kind of, it's just so simple that it's almost, you wouldn't even think to do it. Okay, it's almost a tie. People,
wow.
Standard web UI only about 20%, so that's people are building their own apps quite a bit, which is good. They'll be able to use that code that you wrote there, Laura, and other people as well. But mobile, of course, high up there. That fad's just not going away. Okay, thanks. Thank you, Steph. And we'll keep going here. So really, sum up with the self-serve. What's it all about? It's, you know, empower your users, free your time, use FME Server, and then watch the World Cup, right? Because you got all that free time.
Yeah, that didn't make the list, though, the World Cup.
It didn't make the list. Steph, I think, did you delete that off there? I thought I put it on there. Okay, maybe not. So how do you get more information on this stuff? If you go to FMEpedia, click on that FME server link. You've got demos, tutorials, a lot more information. The demos that you've showed, I'll add the Geocoder one up there when I get back to back to my desk. You're going to be able to get all of this from that FME server link. So check it out. And there's a training coming up on the 29th, 30th, and you can see all the dates there. I think Laura will be involved, probably Devet, myself, who knows. Let's go on to the next one, which is the last of kind of a 4-part series on FME Server, and this one will be diving deeper into FME Server in terms of code, XML, JSON, Ruby, JavaScript, all kinds of stuff we'll be talking about on the 7th there. Developer Playground quite a bit more. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is the part where we go back to showing our faces. Okay, so Steve, you got some questions for us?
I do, yeah. So just in that easy geocoder demo that you showed, Laura, was the geocoder free of charge that you're using in the back end there? How's that working?
That one was an open source one. I was looking at their licensing. Like, you can use it. It is all free. I think they might have limits on how many transactions you can send through there. So it's worth taking a look at their website to get more information on that one.
Yeah. You found out something really funny about it too, didn't you? Just recently.
I couldn't run it from Amazon.
From Amazon, I guess they restrict it because they figured that Amazon would be a corporate user. Is that kind of the...
I think it was something along those lines. That was blocked. So there are some restrictions.
That's our conspiracy theory, but yeah, you can't use it from Amazon. So the live demo we'll put up there, we'll use some other geocoder.
Yeah. Okay, and then the next one was just related around, if you could talk a little bit more about someone's got a custom user interface and they're looking at trying to pull in some of FME's capabilities into their existing map and features, functionality that they have. So is that something that FME Server can be used to do?
Yeah, can we pull up, I think your screen's still live, right? Let's pull up the developer playground.
All right.
And if we look at the self-serve, for example, it's something we didn't mention, but here's something. It's a cool one. Mapbox. We've got an example. If we scroll down here, I'll let you.
I can drive.
There we go. So here's an example of a newer sort of web map being displayed. And go ahead. You can launch the drawing tools there and draw. In this case, all kinds of shapes. And then maybe let's show actually showing the KML on top as well. So if you scroll up, there's the data. I think it's data streaming. Is it?
Oh, okay, there we go.
Mapbox. Let's do it with Mapbox just for fun.
Okay.
It's the new kid on the block, really. And there we go. What do we got? Load data. And so this will be pulling from probably KML, I'd imagine. Probably KML.
Loads GeoJSON. There we go.
There we go. So pulling GeoJSON, but you know it could be GRSS depending on the map client, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we can add data for viewing, and you can. I mean. You can do pretty much whatever you need, I think. Is that what you're looking for, Steve?
Yep, that's great, guys. I didn't even think we'd get a demo out of it, but we did. So, yeah, the last question is going to be pretty easy. With the directory watcher, do you know how the polling is controlled? Like, how often does it look at the directory?
There's a setting.
Oh, did I stump? I stumped. Did I
Well, I
stump?
know the mechanism. You go ahead and look for it, but I know the mechanism for the, if it's a local file, then it's not polling. It's actually a push from the operating system.
Okay.
But for UNC and network file share, it is a pull.
Right.
And I don't know how often it pulls, but just based on my use, I'd say every second.
Yeah, it's generally pretty quick. When it does that,
as soon as it, you know, it's.
I was thinking of IMAP when I said there was a polling interval. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah.
There was a couple questions around the directory watch. People thought it was a new transformer inside a Workbench, but it indeed is an FME server capability, a process that starts up when you create a new one. So
that is right. Yeah.
Yeah. And there was 2 or 3 attendees that had some really good questions, a lot of questions, and definitely invite you guys to follow up with us after this show is over.
Absolutely. So any other questions, or you think we're close to being wrapped up there, Steve?
I think we're at 9:05, so depending on what we want to do, I think we're pretty close to being done.
I think we'll call it there then. Well, there we go. How do you end these things? I don't know.
Well,
I don't
See
know.
you soon.
thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming. There we go.